Emily came into the spare room, her pulse beating, as the rain fell softly against the window. Her Uncle Liam's voice was almost a whisper as he stood behind her. "You don't have to declare anything," he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. "But I've waited for this moment." She turned, her eyes meeting his, the unspoken stress between them reaching a breaking point. Family reunions were always a blend of chaos and nostalgia, a chance to reconnect with relatives who often felt more like strangers as the years passed. For Emily, they were usually forgettable, a blur of polite conversations and dodging nosy questions. But this year, everything was different. The reunion was being hosted at her aunt's sprawling lakeside house, a picturesque retreat far from the chaos of the city. Among the familiar faces, one stood out more than ever: her cousin Liam. Liam had always been charming, effortlessly drawing attention with his easy smile and sharp wit. They'd grown up seeing each other only during holidays, but now, as adults, there was something about him that felt different. He was more confident, his gaze lingering on her longer than it had in the past. Emily tried to brush off the thoughts creeping into her mind. "He's your cousin," she reminded herself. "This is just your imagination." On the second evening of the reunion, the family gathered around the bonfire by the lake. The air was filled with laughter and the smell of roasting marshmallows. Emily sat on a log watching the flames dance when Liam took the seat beside her. "Quiet night, huh?" he said, offering her a beer. "Just soaking it all in," she replied, smiling as she accepted the drink. They fell into easy conversation, reminiscing about childhood antics and catching up on the years they'd spent apart. But as the fire crackled and the night deepened, Emily became acutely aware of the way Liam's knee brushed against hers, the way his gaze lingered on her lips when she spoke. "You've changed, Em," he said suddenly, his tone softer. She looked at him, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "You're different, stronger, more confident," he said, his eyes searching hers. "It suits you." Her cheeks flushed as she turned back to the fire, unsure how to respond. "Thanks, Liam. You've changed, too." Later that night, as the family began to drift off to bed, Emily found herself in the kitchen rinsing out her mug. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Liam leaning casually against the doorframe. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice low. "Just needed some water," she replied, her pulse quickening as he stepped closer. "Same," he said, his gaze steady. "Mind if I join you for a bit?" She shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Suit yourself." They sat at the kitchen table, the quiet of the house amplifying the tension between them. Liam leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked suddenly. Emily frowned, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, like you're following the rules, doing what everyone expects, but none of it feels real," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. She nodded slowly, her chest tightening. "Yeah, all the time." Their eyes met, the air between them charged with an unspoken connection. As the minutes ticked by, their conversation grew deeper, more personal. Liam's hand brushed hers across the table, lingering for a moment longer than it should have. "Liam," she began, her voice trembling. "We shouldn't." "I know," he interrupted, his gaze intense. "But I can't stop thinking about you, Emily. I've tried, but it's impossible." Her heart raced as his words sank in. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," he replied, leaning closer. "But it's the truth." Before she could respond, he cupped her face, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was slow and deliberate. Emily froze for a moment, her mind screaming at her to stop, but the warmth of his touch and the intensity of his kiss melted her resistance. The kiss deepened, their restraint crumbling as weeks, maybe even years, of unspoken feelings spilled over. Liam's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer as Emily's fingers tangled in his hair. "You're impossible," she murmured against his lips, her voice trembling. "And you're unforgettable," he replied, his breath warm against her skin. The kitchen, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, became their sanctuary as they gave in to the connection they could no longer deny. Emily woke the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. Her heart sank as the events of the night replayed in her mind. She sat up, running a hand through her hair as she glanced at Liam, who was sitting in a chair by the window, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said softly, breaking the silence. "I know," he replied, his tone heavy. Last night, it shouldn't have happened. But it did, she said, her voice trembling. And now, I don't know how to move forward. Before Liam could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Their aunt's voice called out, cheerful and unsuspecting. "Breakfast is ready!" Emily's stomach churned as Liam stood, his jaw tightening. "We'll figure it out," he said, his gaze steady. As they joined the family at the breakfast table, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She glanced up to see her younger cousin, Mia, staring at her with a knowing look. After breakfast, Mia pulled her aside, her expression serious. "Emily," she began cautiously, "I saw you and Liam last night." Emily's chest tightened, her breath catching. "Mia, Relax," Mia interrupted, her voice calm. "I'm not going to say anything, but you need to be careful. People will notice." Emily nodded, her heart heavy as Mia walked away. Whatever had begun between her and Liam was far from over, but the consequences were already looming. As the breakfast table emptied and the family dispersed to various activities, Emily found herself alone on the porch, staring out at the calm lake. The weight of Mia's words pressed heavily on her chest. "Be careful." The warning replayed in her mind, mingling with the guilt and longing that had been building since last night. She barely noticed Liam approach until he was sitting next to her, his presence as steady as the morning sun. He handed her a steaming cup of coffee, his fingers brushing hers in a gesture that felt far more intimate than it should have. "She knows," Emily said softly, her gaze fixed on the water. Liam's expression darkened. "Mia?" Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "She said she saw us." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Did she say anything else?" "She won't tell anyone," Emily replied. "But Liam, this is too risky. If someone else finds out." Liam shifted closer, his voice low. "We'll handle it, Em. Together." The day passed in a haze of forced smiles and carefully measured interactions. Emily avoided Liam as much as possible, but every time their paths crossed, the tension between them was palpable. That evening, the family decided to play games in the living room. The laughter and camaraderie felt almost suffocating as Emily tried to keep her emotions in check. Liam, seated across from her, caught her eye more than once, his gaze filled with unspoken meaning. When the games finally ended and the family began to disperse, Emily slipped out to the porch, needing space to breathe. The cool night air was a welcome relief, but it did little to calm her racing thoughts. She wasn't alone for long. Liam appeared in the doorway, his shadow stretching across the wooden floor. "You can't keep running from this," he said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. Emily turned to face him, her arms crossed defensively. "I'm not running. I'm trying to protect us, protect the family." He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "And what about what we feel? Are we supposed to just pretend it doesn't exist?" Her breath hitched as he reached for her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "Liam, this is impossible," she whispered. "We're cousins. People will never understand." "We're more than that, Emily," he said softly. "You know it as well as I do." The air between them crackled with tension as Liam moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Tell me to walk away, and I will. But if you feel even a fraction of what I do, don't push me away." Emily's heart raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear, desire, and confusion. She knew what she should do, what was right. But as Liam cupped her face, his touch warm and grounding, her resolve crumbled. "I hate you for making this so hard," she murmured, her voice trembling. "And I can't hate you for anything," he replied, leaning in. Their lips met in a kiss that was both desperate and tender, filled with all the emotions they had tried to bury. The world around them faded, the porch and the night sky becoming their only reality as they gave in to the connection they couldn't deny. Just as the kiss deepened, the sound of a door creaking open shattered the moment. Emily pulled away, her heart pounding as she turned to see Mia standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Mia," Emily began, her voice trembling. Mia held up a hand, silencing her. "I already told you I wouldn't say anything," she said, her tone calm but firm. "But you need to figure out what you're doing before someone else sees." Emily's stomach churned as Mia disappeared back into the house, leaving her and Liam alone on the porch. "This can't keep happening," Emily whispered, her voice filled with anguish. "It's already happening," Liam replied, his gaze steady. "We just have to decide what to do about it." The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of laughter drifting up from the kitchen. She sat up, her chest tightening as the events of the night replayed in her mind. When she finally made her way downstairs, Liam was there, his expression calm, but his eyes holding a weight that only she could understand. As the day unfolded, the tension between them remained a quiet undercurrent, unnoticed by the rest of the family. But for Emily, the question lingered. How long could they keep their secret before everything came crashing down? As the evening wore on, the family began to retreat to their rooms, the laughter and chatter fading into the quiet hum of the lakeside house. Emily stayed on the porch, her thoughts heavy, the cool night air brushing against her skin. She wasn't sure how much more of this she could handle. The stolen glances, the whispered words, the weight of what had already happened. The sound of the sliding door opening broke her reverie. She turned to see Liam stepping onto the porch, his expression serious yet filled with a quiet determination. "We can't leave things like this," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "Liam," she began, her voice trembling, "this is getting out of hand. Mia already saw us once. If anyone else—" "Stop," he interrupted, stepping closer. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. I care about us. About you." Her breath hitched as his words hung in the air. "You're making this impossible," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "And you're making it impossible for me to walk away," he countered, his gaze locking with hers. The distance between them evaporated as Liam closed the gap, his hand reaching out to brush her arm. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, and before she could stop herself, she leaned into him. "Liam, this is crazy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Then let it be crazy," he replied, his voice low. "But don't pretend it's not real." His lips met hers in a kiss that was hesitant at first, but quickly deepened as the tension between them exploded. Emily's hands found their way to his chest, her fingers clutching at his shirt as he pulled her closer. "You're impossible," she murmured against his lips, her voice shaky. "And you're unforgettable," he replied, his tone thick with desire. The porch, bathed in moonlight, became their haven as they gave in to the connection they had been fighting for so long. Liam's hands moved to her waist, guiding her gently against the railing as their kiss grew more urgent, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. Just as their passion reached its peak, the sound of footsteps on the wooden floorboards inside froze them both. Emily pushed him away, her heart racing as she turned toward the door. Mia stood there, her silhouette framed by the light from the kitchen. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. "I warned you," she said softly, her tone calm but firm. "Mia, please," Emily began, her voice trembling. Mia sighed, shaking her head. "I'm not going to tell anyone, but you two need to get it together. This isn't just about you anymore." Emily felt her chest tighten as Mia turned and walked away, leaving them alone once again. Liam reached for her hand, his grip steady despite the storm brewing around them. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. Emily looked at him, her emotions a whirlwind of fear, guilt, and longing. "What if we can't?" "We will," he said firmly, "because I'm not letting this go. Not now, not ever." As the night stretched on, the weight of their secret pressed heavily on them both, but as Liam pulled her into his arms once more, Emily couldn't deny the truth. No matter how impossible it seemed, they had already crossed the line, and there was no going back.